पगने खबरों में थोड़ा एक बार फिर तो स्वागत है गलबात चल रही थी एंटी-terrorism Act Bill C51 ਦੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਫੋਨ ਤੇ ਜੁੜ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਹਨ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ ਫॉर फ्री एक्सप्रेशन ਦੇ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਕਿਊਟਿਵ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਰ ਟੌਮ ਹੈਫਨਰ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ Bill C51 ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨਗੇ So Tom, welcome and thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, perfect. So we'd like to begin the first question. So why does Canadian journalists of free expression think that they want to oppose Bill C51? Why are you opposing Bill C51?
We've been opposing Bill C51 since the legislation was tabled. We feel like it is massively, that it's extremely dangerous, that it's massively overbroad, and that it will be completely ineffective in terms of actually helping Canadian security. On the contrary, it will make Canada more insecure, and it will be a wholesale violation of all of the rights of all Canadians in Canada. We feel that this is the biggest threat to our democratic values and our rights in Canadian society today.
Why, among all the points, which point do you think is the most sensitive and high risk?
I mean, it's difficult to choose. There are a lot of problems with this bill, but one of the ones that is most problematic is the clause that makes it a crime to promote any terrorism in general. Now, that is unconstitutional in and of itself because it's so broad. Laws have to be specific in order for them to be justifiable charter violations, and you can't get any less specific than clause in general. Now, and what that law actually means is that a concerned Canadian citizen who may talk about terrorism on social media, maybe would post a video from ISIS or Boko Haram and say that this is so dangerous, why are they doing this? These people are crazy, or even a national security reporter, a journalist could quote a terrorist in the public interest, explaining what was going on with a terrorist organization, or again decrying them. And if they did that, that is a crime under this law. It is now a crime to basically quote any terrorist group or terrorist person in terms of the information that they're putting out there, because technically this legislation calls that promoting terrorism, and it's illegal, and you could get up to 5 years in prison as a result of it.
So do you think that it's a clear violation of freedom of speech?
Yes, it is a massive violation of freedom of speech, and this will serve to be a huge chill on free expression. It will directly, journalists will censor themselves out of fear of being prosecuted under this legislation, and more than that, CSIS is able to censor the internet itself without any judicial oversight at its own discretion. Agents can go online and disappear posts off the internet at their own discretion. And no one wants terrorist materials floating around the internet, but we need judicial oversight in order for these types of things to be taken down. You can't just arm a bunch of government agents and let them go do whatever they want. That's the kind of thing you get in Cold War Russia or in a despotic regime today, not something that you get in a mature democracy.
I have a question for you, Tom, here. So as you were talking about social media here and how people are so openly writing about these groups and expressing their opinions. So basically quoting this example, are you saying that since some of the journalists do write about national security, as it was mentioned in the article also, do you think writing about national security will pose a threat to them? Do you not think that just because of the fact that so many terrorist groups are actually recruiting through social media, it is posing a threat, and the government had to tighten its clause there? So do you think that is not validated here?
The fact that terrorist groups are recruiting through social media is absolutely a problem, and it's something that can be addressed through targeted police efforts, through traditional police methods. It's not something that this law is so overbroad that it doesn't address the problem properly. It criminalizes all kinds of legitimate speech. It doesn't just criminalize terrorist recruiting. It goes far beyond that and criminalizes constitutionally protected speech of everyday Canadians. And more than that, it also criminalizes protesting under certain circumstances. So if you're a protest and your protest has nothing to do with terrorism, but threatens the economy or national security of Canada, interferes, with the economy or national security of Canada, So that could be a protest on pipelines, an environmental protest, something like the G20 protests that are completely legal. Those could come under fire from this. If you are protesting these issues and you meet that criteria and your protest is illegal, and an illegal protest, you can say, well, they shouldn't be protesting illegally, but illegal protests are very hard to tell from legal protests. In Toronto, if you use a megaphone after 7 p.m., that's an illegal protest. In Montreal, if you protest without getting prior permission from the police, that's an illegal protest. And you could be charged with terrorism if you participate in these protests, which is something that should be absolutely, it's a core fundamental principle to our democracy that people be allowed to protest, but this bill will prevent people from being able to do that and will allow the government to crack down on what was once legal and peaceful protesters, charge them with terrorism, and then add them to a no-fly list. Even if they aren't convicted, they would still be added to the no-fly list, which has also been massively expanded, and there's no recourse once you've been added to that list.
And one more thing I want to ask is, there are questions regarding the information sharing. So those laws already exist. Why do you think that with Bill C51, those laws are getting affected or some way or the other?
The information sharing clause is also extremely troubling. As you say, the government departments can already share information. CSIS apparently went to the government and gave them a proposal and said that there are some inefficiencies in the system and it should be modified. That's fine. The system could have been modified. Instead, the government went and rewrote the whole system and made it so instead of, allowing some information sharing where appropriate in cases like this, it made it so the government can any government department can share any information about any person with any other government department and with any other person or body, including foreign governments, including foreign corporations. Health Canada can send them your medical history. Revenue Canada can send them your tax information. Passport Canada can send them your passport. CSIS can send them the metadata they collected about you. Essentially, Canadians do not have privacy anymore in Canada because any information the government has on you, which is really all the information about our lives, can be given to anyone else, literally for any purpose. It's a massive, massive violation of our rights.
Tom, I have a question. Despite of all the things that we're saying about safety and security and how the government has brought up the Terrorism Act, they are trying to obviously target people who are through social media also trying to become a part of a terrorist group or something. As you mentioned that people might be protesting somewhere, it may not be related to terrorism. But do you not think that when they do speak about certain issues or certain causes like that, it does raise some sort of flag that they might have a hidden motive behind it, number one. Number two, I also wanted to ask you, do you think by not really listening to CSIS and actually bringing something that they want to bring, they are trying to achieve something else out here?
I don't know what the government's motives are on this. I think the politics plays into this quite heavily. I think that the Conservatives thought that this bill would help them in the election by making them look like they're tough on crime, and it's obviously backfired. Their base certainly supports it, but no one else does. And in terms of stopping terrorist attacks, stopping recruiting on social media, we have laws that deal with that already. Terrorism is not that much of a threat in Canada. It simply isn't. We're a very safe country, and our police forces and security forces protect us very well, and they can protect us fine under the laws that we already had. And they even said they can protect us under the laws that we already had. Massive majority of Canadians are against this bill. A petition with hundreds of thousands of signatures is against this bill. Former prime ministers, former justices of the Supreme Court, the privacy commissioners from the various different provinces, and even the federal privacy commissioner who was appointed by Harper himself, and every national security and privacy expert in the country has spoken out against this bill. It is a bad, unjustifiable bill that needs to be killed in order for us to have real and true and vibrant democracy where people actually enjoy their rights and aren't afraid of the government kicking down their doors and arresting them.
Tom, you said we already have the laws in place for all the information sharing and everything. What do you think? Why are you opposing Bill C51 if it makes no more changes in those laws?
No. I'm not saying that it does change the laws. I'm saying that we have laws in place that already work for these things. We have information sharing laws that already work and that could have been modified slightly. Bill C51 overhauls these things and makes it massively overbroad. So what worked before now will, instead of being a targeted situation where they're only targeting the people who are actually violating these things, now these laws apply to every single Canadian, and it will be extremely damaging because it targets so many people and violates so many people's rights.
Tom, I have a question about the RCMP and the CSIS. CSIS apparently seems to be not happy with this new act, and now they're coming up with their own views. But also there are articles out there that speak for the fact that RCMP and CSIS don't really work very well together as far as the information sharing is concerned. Do you think just because of their personal conflicts that they are trying to target anti-terrorism act?
I mean, I really don't know, but I think that it speaks volumes as to how bad this legislation is that CSIS is even against it. In terms of what rivalries there are between the agencies, I really have no idea. But I can tell you this, CSIS was created because the RCMP was abusing its intelligence gathering power so much in the 1970s and the 1980s. That's why we created CSIS. But this bill now takes the power that we had taken, it puts the power that the RCMP had back in the hands of CSIS. But instead of it being a police agency like the RCMP that's publicly accountable, now it's in the hand of a secret spy agency that has no oversight whatsoever. So they can basically get away with anything. So it's a very dangerous situation.
Oh, I have another question. So, okay, talking about anti-terrorism act and Bill C51, how bad it could be for the public, for the safety, and also the information out there, do you not think you can give it a little bit benefit of doubt and also consider the fact that it will speed up the process of investigation? Do you not think it will help Canadians and their security in any way at all?
No, it won't help Canadians because the thing is, when you're investigating, when it comes to stopping terrorism, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. And when your surveillance is so broad as to target every single Canadian, you're adding an infinite amount of needles to that haystack. So this will not help security. It will hinder security. And the thing is, we have to remember, we do not need these massive, insane measures to protect Canada. Our police forces are doing a fine job as it is right now. There's no justification whatsoever in this legislation for these encroachments on our rights.
What do you think, after all this, is it actually wasting any of the government resources and public resources?
Is it a waste of public resources?
Or the government resources?
I think that this bill is a waste of public resources. Absolutely. I don't think that this trial will be. I mean, hopefully we won't have to go to trial. But if we do, because hopefully the next government formed after this election will stop this, will repeal this law. But if we do have to go to trial, I think it will be an absolutely, I think on our part, it certainly will be worth spending our resources. I think the government will be wasting money fighting this because there's no reason for them to fight it. They should simply repeal the law. And I mean, if we think that the government, when we give the government this power, it will lead to abuse because there's no accountability. And without accountability, governments always, those in power will always abuse their power when they can get away with it. And we have a long history of that in Canada, and it will only get worse by supercharging these police agencies without giving them any kind of enforcement or any kind of accountability.
Tom, I would like to ask one thing, that if this judgment on this petition comes before elections, and if it comes against the Conservative government, would you think that will impact hugely on the results of elections?
I think this challenge already will impact on the election. It's very unlikely that the trial will even start before the election. These things take time. But I think the fact that so many Canadians have spoken out against this already is going to influence the election. I think Bill C51 will be the ballot issue. And you have to remember, too, this isn't CJFE talking against the Conservatives. This is more than 100,000 Canadians. This is the vast majority of Canadians that have been polled on this issue. This is every national security and privacy expert in the country, former prime ministers, former justices of the Supreme Court. There is a massive, massive coalition against this bill, and the next government would be incredibly stupid to keep this legislation.
How far, before you go, I have a last question. How far are we as far as challenging this act is concerned in the court?
The challenge has been filed. That's it. It's in the very initial stages. So we don't even have a trial date yet. The trial date will probably come after the election if the bill isn't repealed. But if the bill is repealed, then we won't. Then we will drop the trial because there won't be any legislation to fight.
Right. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you would like to add at the end of the interview?
If people want to support this campaign, they can go to our crowdfunding page. It's gofundme.com/C51 on trial, and they can also tweet about it, #C51 on trial.
Sharing the information with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you.